Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and on this Friday afternoon, I'm joined by Brian Degnan and also James French. James dialing in from Ireland, Brian all the way from England, and myself obviously in Scotland. It just shows you how well supported and how far-reaching this club called Celtic is. James, we have another special guest who's making a long-awaited return to Acsom, an old Acsom favourite. Let me know who you think it is in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen. Who is going to make their big, long-awaited return to the Acsom fold today? Let me know who you think it is, and then we will introduce them. It'll be tremendous to have a wee chat with them. Loads to catch up on. But before we do that, James French, that jersey you're wearing is older than you, mate. That is an absolute belter. That is a retro classic. Show us it. Come on.
It's lovely. Yeah, it's.
Yes.
It would have been. I wouldn't even be able to tell you the year it was made now, but I'm happy to wear it now. It's a lovely kit.
This was one of them, and I said that no, John Keenan, Rod Stewart is not coming back on the show, John. Especially once he's had a couple, because obviously he showed himself the other night as liking a little swally or two. My ball, Jerry. Yes, Jerry will be making a return, but not today. Good shout. Keith Oakton, a big shout out to you as well. Hello from a very wet Plymouth. It's Valentine's Day, ladies and gents, and hopefully you have remembered your loved ones on this day of all days. Don't wake up, especially a few days before it, when they say to you, don't bother about cards and presents this year, so you don't. And then you're in the bad books. Never quite understood that one. What will we be talking about today? We will be looking back at the performance during the week, which I have called brave. I've called it heroic. We'll be looking ahead to Germany next week. And the small matter, of course, of the domestic action at the weekend. Brian Degnan, we faced Dundee United, of course. But let me get your thoughts on the first leg against Bayern Munich.
I thought we were good. I saw some sort of criticism after the game, and I think in the emotional moment after, it's quite easy to criticise and so should have done better, blah blah blah. But I think when you take a bit of distance from it and look at the campaign in general, I thought we acquitted ourselves well. I thought we should have had a penalty. I know that's a bone of contention. I thought that we should have. I'm still not convinced the first goal should have been ruled out either. So look, losing 2-1 to a team like Bayern Munich is no disgrace. And yes, we had to defend deep at times, but I think we went for it, particularly in the second half. I thought we acquitted ourselves really well. And I think if you look at the campaign in total, like, other than the Dortmund game, there's not been one game where I've went. I mean, maybe the Zagreb game, you think we could have done better, but I think over the course of it, we'd have said to me before the campaign, you'll only lose 2 games, both from away from home, and you get to the knockout stages, you would have absolutely took it, like, no doubt about it. So I think for the most part, performances are good. I think it's clear there's still areas in the team we need to improve on, which I'm sure we'll touch upon. But I think considering the difference in levels with some of these teams and us, I thought we acquitted ourselves well, and I was very proud of the performance. I thought that it was a shame that the first goal wouldn't. I think Taylor was at fault. But even the technique for the boy to get it right into the top corner, even Harry Kane's goal, like, credit where credit's due. You're playing a fantastic team. I had palpitations every time Musiala get the ball. I thought it was going to pass out in the pub watching it. Had to get somebody in the CSE boys to give me mouth to mouth, which I'm sure they would have hated. But no, in general, I thought very impressed, very happy with the campaign, and I think that we can be really proud of how we've done.
Yeah, we can, and I think it's also important, Brian, that you do look at the performance as a whole, but you also look at where we can do better. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Every time Celtic concede a goal, I look at it and think, how could we have prevented that? And, you know, it's the only way you improve as a football team. It's not because as a fan you're looking to criticise, you're looking for negatives. Absolutely not. You're looking at a situation where it's ifs, buts and maybes against Bayern Munich, a team, like you say, who are way ahead of us in terms of the finances. And I think that with regards to the financial outlay, we often get it in domestic football and get told, well, stop worrying about it once you get to the Champions League. But the gap is unbelievably huge. And the Dortmund game's a reminder of what these teams can do to you. And we've gone out there the other night and we've approached it completely differently, and we've done really, really well. And I think that, yeah, there's nothing wrong with looking at the 2 goals and saying, why did that happen? Who was responsible for it? Can they improve as footballers? Is it a reoccurring theme? And if it's the latter, maybe they're not up to the standard of Champions League football for Celtic. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you want to progress at this level, I think that's fine, absolutely fine. Now, I'm hoping to get Mr. question mark onto the show, and I've just given away their identity in terms of the fact that I'm Mr. They are coming back onto the show as soon as they're ready. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back Mr. Colin Watt. There he is, looking resplendent in the Origins jersey that was released a wee while back. 2 years, 2 matches ago, I think it was, Colin.
Yeah, first Origins kit. Yeah, good to be back. Nice to see everybody that I remember from the comments. It's been a while. Hope you miss me. If not, I'll just leave again. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, John,
it'll be the biggest disappointment since Leeds United tweeted out, "Don't go to bed yet," and then sold 2 of their players. It's been a while.
Rod Stewart said John, but we've got better than that. We've got better.
Just not got the hair of Rod. That's a problem.
His hair is incredible. I think it's getting bigger every time I see him at the games. It's getting larger, and there's no way he does that himself. Someone is dealing with that installation on a daily basis. Colin, I was just saying before I come to young James, I was just saying there that when you come up against a team of the quality of Bayern Munich and you narrowly lose, there is no shame in looking at the goals and saying, well, how could these be prevented in the future? Who's responsible? And if, as I said to Brian, if it's a recurring theme, there's nothing wrong with saying we could actually get an upgrade on that particular player or that area of the park. But before we get to the specifics of it, what did you make of the game the other night, Colin? What was your thoughts going in, and how did you feel afterwards?
I think it was one of those games you looked at it and you're like, do you know what? If we play to our ability, we can give them a game. But you weren't going into it thinking, right, we're going to go and we're going to scud these guys 3-4-0. You're like, we just want to make ourselves respectable on the stage to show that we belong to be there. And I think, although a lot of people say the first half, we showed them a bit too much respect, you've got to do that, because when you don't, teams like this can just cut you open. Brian, you spoke about it earlier, the Dortmund game, I was over there. That was heartbreaking the first 45 minutes, just seeing how tore apart we got. And I think what you see is Celtic played the way that every other SPL team plays when they come to Celtic Park. They sat behind the ball, they were well drilled, they made it very hard for Bayern to get through. Apart from maybe 1 or 2 chances, Bayern really didn't create a lot in the first half. The goal, that is a world-class goal. He takes that so well. Taylor could have maybe done slightly better, but no keeper saving that shot. That shot's in the top bag every single day. The second goal, I think the marking, we need to take a look at that and see who was actually meant to be marking Kane. When I've seen the pictures back, I can't work out if it's Johnson or if it's Engels that's meant to be marking him. But you can't leave a world-class striker like that much space in the box. He's always going to find the back of the net. But the good thing was we didn't give up. The substitutions came on, they brought the energy. I thought Yang had a decent game when he came on. Apparently only turns up in European games now. But he was excellent.
Just the big games, Colin.
Exactly. And the idea of playing Idah through the middle, he comes alive when he's got that opportunity to run. We can go on and have a conversation about the left-hand side and how he was sort of drifted out of the game when he went there. But when he came through the middle, he came alive. And at 2-1, you're thinking, do you know what? See if we get this second goal, this tie's not over. The tie's still technically not over, but you're going over there thinking we're going to need to have a good go at them. And as you say, if you do that, it could be another Dortmund, or it could be a magical moment. That's just the joys of following Celtic.
It is the joys. I'll come back to your trip over to Dortmund. I've not spoken to you about that, Colin. My take on it, James, is this, and I don't disagree with what Brian or Colin has said about the goals, for example, but you know the first one, right? Yes, he's a world-class player, and yes, it was a world-class finish, but he had stepped inside of Taylor twice already in the game, twice in the first 15 minutes. Taylor didn't learn from it. And also my criticism with Taylor, it was him that gave the ball away 50 seconds before the goal. Needlessly, when we were in possession with a minute to go to half-time, Taylor kicks the ball out the park. And I just look at a professional footballer and think, you should not do that at training, never mind on the biggest stage of European football. And he did it all the way through the game. I think there was 3 or 4 occasions where he's tried the pass up the wing and it's ended up out the park. And I just think to myself, keep hold of the ball. I mean, even if it's boring, going left to right, keep hold of it to half-time and we're going at nothing each. And it is these types of marking. The second one, Colin, by the way, I watched the game back yesterday morning, And I'm going to say it was Johnston's man at the back.
I thought that as well. Yeah,
because he'd kind of man-marked him. And at every corner up to that point, when Kane was trying to find space, it was Taylor that was on him. He was following him about. But for some bizarre reason, Johnston goes right into the centre of the park. He's standing next to Trusty, and you're thinking, mate, what are you doing, Harry Kane, at the back post? So, absolute world-class players, no doubt about it. The first goal was a world-class finish. Schmeichel's no stopping that. However, James, there's wee things about those goals that I think we can improve on. We can mark Harry Kane at a corner. We can make sure that pass from Taylor to Maida finds his man or goes inside to Engels. And then we don't concede the goals. And these are small things. Brendan ultimately will decide whether the two guys I've mentioned are good enough. But if they're not, they need to be replaced. I think Johnston is. I think he's proved this season he is a Champions League standard player for Celtic. He's one of the guys on the team sheet you look at and go, right, I'm quite safe with him. I'm happy with Johnston. Taylor, on the other hand, and it's not an opportunity just to hit Taylor with a stick, I don't think he's up to that level. James, how did you see it? How did you analyse those two goals, those two moments?
Yeah, I think the first one, I think it's easy to kind of single Taylor out. I think you're probably right on the ball. Taylor was quite poor. Like when he was kind of stress tested when he was pressed, he did kind of give the ball away or put it out of play, and you can't do that in kind of knockout stage of Champions League. But at the same time, I think dealing with Michael Elise, like one of the best players in the world in his position, for the goal, like Taylor obviously kind of lacking that speed, lacking that strength. He has to kind of close Elise down, like and not give him that space. He closes him down, hits back off Taylor, falls back to him, and then it's a world-class finish. So I think the first goal it's kind of hard to kind of single Taylor out. But at the same time, there were moments in the game where he was poor and he did give the ball away, which kind of isn't really like what Taylor normally does. I think he's normally quite accomplished on the ball. It's normally kind of those defensive moments that do let him down. In terms of the argument, is he good enough for the Champions League? I think Taylor's been a brilliant servant to Celtic. He's obviously, we all know he's very good at cutting it, kind of coming inside, being that inverted fullback. But I just don't think he has the kind of the strength, the pace to kind of to play at the top level. And you'll kind of see that with his options in the summer, with the clubs that are after him. Like there won't be a Premier League team after him, and I don't think there'll be any kind of lower Premier League team after him. Like I think he just doesn't really have the athleticism to play at the highest level, and I think Alistair Johnson does, and that's probably what separates the two. In terms of the second goal, I think it's kind of obvious. Like it's, as Roger said, you can't leave the best finisher or one of the best finishers in world football alone in the box, because he's just going to punish it. And I think it's easy for us to kind of say, oh, like it's scandalous marking, it's amateur stuff. But like when you're playing against Bayern Munich, you're concentrating for 50 minutes on end, you're really backs against the wall. These are kind of the little moments that let slip, like your mental tiredness, your physical tiredness. And that's kind of, I thought that moment was a real result of us just kind of tiring mentally and physically, leaving Harry Kane unmarked in the box. And yeah, it's just kind of, as you said, it's just kind of the small margins at this level. And I think it's when you are stress tested, these are just kind of the moments that do happen. But as a kind of on a whole performance-wise, I think Rodgers' game plan was pretty spot on. We could have been braver in the first half, yes. But at the same time, like Bayern play one of the highest lines in the Bundesliga. Like if you watch the Feyenoord game, I heard a lot of people saying, oh, Feyenoord beat them 3-0. If you watch that game, I think Feyenoord had 20% possession. Bayern pinned them in completely into their own half. Feyenoord could barely get out, and that's exactly what happened to us in the first half. And in the second half, we really responded. Obviously, Rodgers altered some things, and we really came back into it, which is testament to Rodgers and the team. So I think overall, it's just kind of the performance-wise just shows how far we've came. It's those little moments that we need to improve on, and hopefully we'll do that in the coming windows.
Yeah. Sorry, on you go, Colin.
So I was just going to say, just to touch on what James was saying there, the idea of Taylor when he leaves, because it does look as if he's going to leave this summer. The clubs that are lining up to come and get him, you're thinking this is a guy that's won multiple titles in Scotland. He's won trebles. He's had caps for Scotland. You're thinking that's the kind of player that if it's a freebie, it's a punt for teams to take. And the fact that he's going there, I don't think it's overly a testament to his ability, because I think he's actually a very good defender. And when he has got it in him to go forward, you saw it against Leipzig. He's the one that's in the box putting the ball across for the second goal. He can do that, but he doesn't do it enough. And I think it's part of his problem is he likes to play this inverted fullback role And I really don't think that's part of Rodgers' philosophy. I don't think that suits the way that Rodgers wants to play football. You notice when Schlupp came on in the second half, it was a case of he was higher up the park. He was the one that was wanting to make the advanced runs, go around the outside of the winger and actually get the ball across, whereas Taylor's very comfortable. I don't know if it's because of his lack of pace or what it is. He just likes to sort of drift in. So when the ball goes to Trusty, if you watch the highlights back or you watch the game back, the amount of times the ball went from Schmeichel to Trusty to Taylor, and Taylor was 2 yards away. So then instead of opening it up, he's got to then play a 25-yard pass to Idah, which was
the risky one, yeah,
because he's so far up the park.
Totally,
it went back to Trusty. So the two of them probably the two most touches of the ball for Celtic, because it seemed to just go they're back, and then Trusty had to open it up and go to Carter Vickers. The gap between Taylor and Idah is huge, and it's the difference between their two styles of play. Taylor wants to get it down, he wants to find somebody to pass it into, whereas Idah wants to be on the shoulder of that last defender to use his pace to get past them. So if you had a different player on that side, if you had Jota maybe to come in and pick the ball up, it might suit it a bit better. But when you've got someone like Idah, you've got to play to his strengths. And I think if Idah's still here, if we manage to turn down the bids in the summer, and you've got Katie there, you'll see a difference down that left-hand side, because Katie's first idea is he picks the ball up and goes forward. And that's what he's done his whole career. And Taylor's not like that. And it doesn't suit a lot of teams' playing style. So I think that's how you see, that's why he's linked with teams in the Championship and even abroad, because that's the kind of play style that they have.
No, some great points here, by the way, Colin. And I think that what you were saying there about finding Idah and finding the best ball for Idah, you're right. It has to be pinpoint. And because he's so close to the receiving ball from Trusty, then he's got a distance to find Idah. And I think 3 or 4 times it ended up in touch. And Idah was so frustrated. And the one that I pointed out 10 seconds before the goal, Idah was so frustrated, he booted the ball into the crowd. And at that moment when he did that, Brian, I thought Idah sliced it out the park. But when I watched it back, the ball was out the park, So there was a wee frustration there. Colin's touched on it. I didn't want to think about Idah leaving this football club. How horrible is it, lad?
It's a horrible thought.
It is. But every time we find a hero and a gem, unfortunately, it enters your mind, because we generally have that 2 or 3 year span. Idah, let's just focus on him for a wee bit here, Brian. It's no lost on me what he's done this season. I mean, 22 goals. He's scoring in Europe. He scored in that game that Colin mentioned earlier over in Dortmund. He scored the equaliser, remember, very quickly after they went 1-0 up.
Oh, yeah. What a moment that was.
Oh, it gave us some hope, Colin. But Idah's having the season he's like. The question I'm going to put out to you, lads, for this weekend, and also with one eye on Germany next week. Are you going over, by the way, Colin? I know that you do quite a few away days. You've not brought up the points.
The holidays run out eventually,
Aye, they do. Aye, absolutely, the brownie points. So when we look at that, and we look at Idah and the fact that Liam Carrigan started a campaign about 3 years ago to play him centre forward, Brian, and now some people are starting to listen. How do we line up against Dundee United? Because I mean, Jota's got more minutes in his legs. Kuhn was denied a phenomenal opening goal for Celtic that night against one of his former clubs. Idah cut a bit of an isolated, frustrated figure. I'll come back to that. I'll ask James his thoughts, because he's been on great form recently. So how do you set up the front three, Brian, when we go into the game against Dundee United with one eye on Germany?
So I think if you've got an eye on Germany, I think you probably just leave Idah on the bench against Dundee United. I think it's not that he can't do it. I mean, he could run to Germany and still play 90 minutes. Like,
Aye.
There's no problem there. I know, probably will. I just think that you don't want to risk any re-injuries or anything like that. And I just think Idah, he was a bit isolated, and I think Rodgers had some choice words for him when he came off by the looks of it. But the big man's still been on form, and I think he's a confidence player. And I imagine him to get a roasting after the game. So start him against Dundee United, let him find his feet a wee bit again, and then give Jota the full 90 would be my sort of call. And the thing about Idah, and I'm joking about the he's running, but where we lack at Champions League level, a lot of times isn't necessarily just the technique, it's the physicality.
Mm-hmm.
I think Idah is, he's done well in the Champions League as well as domestically. It's because he's not that he's that strong, but he's so fast. He's just got that elite level athleticism that a lot of their players don't have. I thought Engels was good the other night. I think he's actually done better in the Champions League than domestically at times because of that physicality, because of that size. Bernardo's shown up well when he's played. Big Trusty looks more accomplished at Champions League level than Scales, although I think Scales has been a wee bit unfortunate at times. And I think when you see like Shoop coming on, he was better, but I think it was purely just because he's strong, he's fast. He could just that extra wee bit that the physicality needed. He had it, and Taylor, and I know he was at fault for that, and I think we've all said we need better in that position. But Colin's right; he is technically a good football player, and he's done well for us. I don't think technique's necessarily the problem. It's the lack of physicality. He doesn't have the pace or that physical presence, and I think that's where you alluded to it earlier, Paul, with the difference between Johnson and him, because Johnson does have that physicality, and I think that's the gap we need to bridge domestically in Champions League. It's not just the technique; it's that extra bit of physicality.
Absolutely.
So that would be my steer. So, and although I'm saying, I think we should be positive with the campaign. Obviously, you can drill down and say, well, that wasn't good enough, that wasn't good enough. But I think I'm just looking at it as a whole, especially compared to last season, especially compared to the past 10 seasons.
Yeah,
the difference in the team. But I think one of the differences is, Rodgers likes that big physical player. He likes that power, that pace, and I think that can subsidise for a lack of technique at times.
Yeah, that's why he not only brought Ollie Burke to the football club, but name-checked him not that long ago. He does like the physicality and the speed and the power. Look at his signings this season, guys, right? You look at like Big Schmeichel at the back, Trusty in defence. You've got Engels in midfield, Idah up top, and Schlupp coming in at left. These are all big physical players. And I had a great discussion with a Palanine who has to come into this as Acsom, former coach, an absolute football brain. And I was talking about how well Feyenoord have done. This is a team last season that we managed to beat, obviously, at home. People call it a dead rubber, but we beat them at home. And they beat us away from home after we had 2 men sent off. But look at what they've done this season. They've actually built and moved forward. And what my mate was saying to me was that, in terms of the technical ability of the players they brought in, Brian, not necessarily better than the technical ability of the players Celtic have brought in, but they have definitely focused on the physicality, the athleticism, the power, the speed of the individuals. And you're seeing a team that really is, are they punching above their weight? Are they actually achieving what they should be achieving? But I look at Feyenoord this season. Who was it last season? We were looking at Copenhagen, wasn't it? We were looking at Copenhagen last season.
Look at Club Brugge this season.
Yeah.
Look at them. I mean, a team of absolute units. And they weren't, playing world-beating football, but they've done really well considering. And I think, I'm not saying you always want to perform like that in Europe, but we should be, our player profile, I've said this a million times on here, but when we're targeting players, it should be the physical aspects, because that's going to bridge that gap, just that little extra bit. And especially with players in Scotland, if we're playing even domestically, Scottish League is aggressive, it's strong, but it's not the most athletic in terms of that extra speed, that pace, especially when compared to the Premier League, for example, which is a team of a league of athletes.
Yeah.
And I think, and I hate saying it, but you're starting to see it with Callum McGregor now as well. He's deteriorating physically. He's not as fast as he was. He's not able to just nip in. He's never been that strong, Callum, but he was always clever enough to use his position and his pace to get in and nip the ball and drive it forward. And you're starting to see that fade a wee bit, and I think that was exposed a couple of times as well.
See, sorry, Colin. See, just the physical aspect to Callum, who I love, we all do, right? But see, against Bayern Munich, when you're looking at them, and it was like it was a man v boy, unbelievable. And then there was a moment when was it Sani? Is it Sani or Mani? Sani. And he makes this run, Colin, right? And you're looking at the size of him, thinking, how can he shift at that pace? He was unbelievable physically. They really are specimens, Colin, aren't they?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's funny you mentioned Bruges, Brian. They're actually really good at diving as well. That was never a penalty, that one against Atlanta. But no, we do lack that physical player, and a lot of people will hark back to like when we beat Barcelona, we had Wanyama in the middle of the park, and as much as people say, well, he was a unit, he was actually technically very good on the ball as well. So it's a case of finding that player. And I like what you're saying, Brian, about McGregor, and I know he's took a lot of flack from Wednesday night, and there's a lot of people defending him and a lot of people saying that he had a poor game. I didn't think it was one of his best games, but if you look at the numbers that he's doing this year in terms of the minutes that he's playing, it's actually frightening for someone that's on the verge of turning 32, a bit like myself. So we're the same age, me and Callum. But I couldn't play. I mean, he's played 3,300 minutes this season. He's been involved in, we've played 40 games this season. He's been involved in 38 of them. And the only 2 that he's missed was the 2 that he was out injured for in October. And you can see that, obviously, the fact that he's not playing internationally, it just shows that he's coming into it and he's taking care of himself to that level. But if he continues to play at this rate, he's going to have blitzed the amount of games that he played last year. Even if we get to the stage of we continue to win every game from now till the split, and that's where you won the title, would be like the game before the split. Even if he plays every single game and every single minute like he has done up to now, he'll have played over 600 minutes more than what he played last season. And if he goes on the average of what he's playing every week, he'll have played 850 minutes more. So forget the fact that he's playing international football. The amount of minutes that he's putting in for Celtic this season is frightening. The only player that's actually been involved more, outfield player, is Rio Hatate. He's been involved in every single game this season, but his minutes are lower, quite a bit lower, like 500 minutes lower, because we're actually taking him off and we're resting him. So it's interesting that you're talking about like Saturday and what we do tomorrow. For me, I think McGregor, as much as he's the captain, we have to look at rotating him in and out as well. He's coming to that stage in his career. Like if you think back to when Scott Brown was at his peak, he would have a great season and then he'd have a poor season and he'd have a great season. But we do have to start looking at who is going to be Callum McGregor's long-term replacement. For me, I would love us to try and get Lennon Miller in. I think overall, in the future, he could be the next Callum McGregor. He's got that. He's a wee bit taller than Callum. He's got to bulk out a bit, but he is still young. And from the showings that he's had at Motherwell, I think within a season or 2, he could be up to that level. I think he's very, very good. But you look at it right now, we're rotating out Hatate, we're rotating out Engels, we're bringing in Bernardo, McCowan's getting game time. I still think we need that other midfielder, and I think that's something we have to prioritise in the summer window. Alongside a striker has to be that number one holding midfielder. It might not be number one right now, but you know that in a season or 2, he's going to be the person that steps in, because when McGregor hits 33, 34, with the amount of minutes that he's playing, he's not going to get to the standards that he was at before. He's playing really well, he's playing at his peak, but he is going to have games like that where the amount of minutes is just going to get to him.
I think it's a great point you make, Colin, about Callum McGregor. I'm probably on the side of, if I was looking at midfield the other night, the best player for me was Engels. I thought, yes, there was stray passes here and there, but some of the work that probably goes unnoticed off the ball was incredible. I think defensively, he's very, very good. He loves the rough and tumble of the game. You know, he's not scared of the physical aspect of that. His passing range is frightening. His passing range is so good. I mean, when you look at his assists this season, some of the passing is up there with Matt O'Reilly, who we thought to ourselves, you know, we're going to miss him. We're going to miss his goals and his creativity. And Engels is bringing that to the party as well. And he draws a foul. I keep saying this. I'm not sure what metric this is on, but he draws loads of fouls in a game. One of which ended up in the box, and I'm sure we'll touch on that, by the way. Colin, have a wee think as well. I'm going to come back to you on Luke McCowan. I've not had a chance to speak to you on Acsom about Luke McCowan. I know he's from your neck of the woods.
Yep.
But a player from James's neck of the woods is Adam Idah. James, we have been shouting for the rooftops about the big man's performances. I think the young boys game was a turning point for him. I know he didn't get the goal, but he forced the own goal. Then he went on a run and he was starting to look confident and his touch was back. And the other night, he was disappointed when he came on. Colin's right, you know, right up the tunnel, straight up the tunnel. He never went into the dugout or anything else. Brendan Rodgers was unhappy the fact that he wasn't pressing high up enough, because you've seen Idah doing it on the left and Idah wasn't doing it through the middle. And there was one occasion where the ball actually ends up coming to the goalie and Idah would have been there and should have been there. So Rodgers just took him off. I'm not going to say it wasn't pre-planned. I'm pretty sure it would have happened anyway. But what did you make of his performance? Does he start in Germany, James? This is the other big question.
Yeah, it is a big question. And I think the game, to be fair, like in that first half, like we obviously had very little of the ball. In the last few weeks, Adam Idah found a lot of success in the box, kind of simplifying his game, being there for kind of those kind of the crosses, the kind of cutbacks. Like he's really thrived on that, and I think that's where Adam Idah is best, in the box. And and kind of doing his damage there. And I think this kind of wasn't really the game for him in terms of that. Like, I think it was ideally if we had a really fit Jota, I think if you play Idah from the start up front, I think he causes them two Bayern centre backs who do have a mistake in them despite their quality, do have a mistake. And I think Idah would have definitely caused them some headaches in terms of, as you've seen in the when he was kind of switched up there, like the intensity of his pressing and stuff, putting Neuer under pressure, like he's just kind of different level to kind of anyone in our team in terms of pressing. And in terms of Idah, it's just kind of, obviously he's been really, really good form recently, and I think, as I said, it's kind of because he simplified his game and been in the box more and been able to kind of be on the end of crosses and cutbacks. And I think, hopefully, I think at the weekend he probably will start again, just kind of the lack of strikers we have, and wanted to give Idah a rest. Maybe he gets a couple of goals there, and then going into Munich, it just kind of depends on what Rodgers' preference is. If he wants to go at Adam, maybe to hold the ball up more, or go with Dyson and be a bit more aggressive and try and press Bayern. So it's just kind of a matter of preference and where Jota is as well. If Jota's up to that intensity to play at the Allianz Arena in a knockout tie, so it's a kind of a big question. I think we probably have to wait till Saturday and see how Jota looks if Adam gets a couple of goals to kind of really answer it. But in terms of Adam's performance, I think I know he did kind of look a bit dissatisfied coming off. I did see him in the dugout. I think he just kind of went in to get his jacket and stuff. So I don't think he wasn't kind of fuming or anything, but he obviously wasn't happy to be coming off. And looking to the weekend, hopefully he can kind of get one or two goals, and then obviously give Rodgers a big headache for next Tuesday.
Yes, Markey makes a great point. Maybe he just needed to go to the toilet. I thought players just did it as they stood. Gary Lineker used to anyway. I'm going to come to you, Colin Watt, in relation to Luke McCowan. Quite a few messages coming through in here. The Flying Haggis says, McCowan looks top quality every time I see him. His movement and touches against Wraith were top notch. Chill Pill says that Luke McCowan isn't getting enough game time. Danielle makes the point, and I think this is a fair point. Engels is a bit light for such a big boy. I reckon that's going to change. He's going to develop, and once he's the unit he can be, then you'll see a player that will just, there's no ceiling to him, you know. We've also got Chilpil coming on back on to say that he doesn't get the Lennon Miller hype. And Del Boy, one of our favourites, Awata, are we regretting letting him go? I think he would have been a great replacement from Callum. I think the problem with Awata, he just wasn't getting game time. And he was probably pushing for a move himself, and he's now playing, and he's showing the quality that he had. Right, so let's go to McCowan then. Colin, what did you know about him before he came to Celtic?
Well, we actually went to the same school. He was a couple of years below me in school. So he's always been a top talent. Coming from Greenock, that's probably the most famous person from Greenock after Martin Compston now. What about Stevie Fulton? That's a while ago, wasn't it? I mean, the top three currently are probably Martin Compston, Luke McCowan, and the Oakmall Valentine's Day video. If anybody's not seen that, that's gone viral. Definitely look that up after you finish in here. Is
it safe to watch it?
Oh no, it's safe to watch. It's just some complete absolute roasters. It'll give you a good laugh today.
The Greenock natives have just been described as absolute roasters.
We know it. We're allowed to say it. Anyone else says that there's trouble, but when you come from here, you can roast your own. No, but Luke McCowan, he's a great talent, a very good player, someone that I thought Celtic would have been interested in a couple of years ago. He's taken his time, he's built himself up. He started at Morton, and then the Morton Academy sort of collapsed on itself through funding. He went to Ayr, he came through there, played really well, got the move to Dundee, and he's shown that he can make that step up. And people saying he's not really been given the game time, so he's made 26 appearances this season, which is pretty good for someone who's stepping up to that level. Played just under 1,000 minutes, so I think there is still more to come from him, but I think that shows that Rodgers is trusting him, considering that if you compare them to maybe a young player coming in, I know obviously Luke's a good bit older, but he's been trusted in those situations. He's made those starts as well, and to be honest, coming up against Dundee United tomorrow, I would definitely give him the game. I think he's good enough to do that. Luke's got that ability to sort of split a defence and find a pass, which is interesting because he played a lot of his younger career as a winger, and now he's come into the midfield, and you can see that he's not maybe got that pace to get by the players as much, but he's got the eye. And if you look at some of his assists and some of his sort of secondary assists this season, The passing has been absolutely top class. And sometimes you just need players like that. You need really good squad players. We can't just have the first three. So whether it be Engels, Hatate, Bernardo, McGregor, you need players like that can come in and make that difference. You think back to signings like back in the day, like Stephen Pearson, and the impact that he could have on the squad. You could trust him, you could throw him into games and he would give us a performance. The same way that McCowan has right now. Same way that we thought David Turnbull might be able to do, but his over-reliance on sort of became an easy target for people because he wasn't providing that. But Luke's done really well. He's a mad Celtic fan. His whole family are Celtic fans. Everybody in Greenock's so proud of him. I know that the guys at Notre Dame, where we went to school, we're all proud of him. So it's great to see a guy from Greenock doing well.
Oh, it definitely is, Colin. And had you not taken a wee break from Acsom, I'm sure you'd have been shouting for us to go and sign him before we did. The other big thing, of course, as Laurie reminds us, happy Valentine's Day to everybody who tunes in to Celtic State of Mind. And Jungle Lion is getting into the spirit. Roses are red, violets are blue. What's
Brew.
next? Brew. Now, the 14th of February is a famous date, not only in that calendar of couples and love and all that kind of stuff, but also just in Scottish football history. It's one of the dates, and I always felt that, the Ben and Jerry's ice cream, I always felt that Duff and Phelps had a real opportunity to cash in on that with their own range of ice cream and jelly. If you know, you know. Hope you enjoy it tonight, ladies and gents. Now, we've also got Shabs coming in. Hail, hail from a snowy Prague. Who's all going to München? Unfortunately not, Shabs. I won't be there. I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments. I know a few of the Acsom team. Big Acom's going to go over. Declan will be there. Of course he will. Natasha's going over as well. So there'll be some Acsom representation. And in the future, and I've said this for 2 seasons, what I want to do is have Acsom at the away days, and we can do loads over there as well. So watch this space. Just probably need a sponsor for it. Celtic follower. The only player I dressed is Maida. If at half-time we have a good lead, then that's the time to make changes. And we've also got McLaughlin P coming in to say, I think we would need them lot to lose 3 times before we play them to clinch the league versus them. Brian, there's this massive flip of a dial, if you like, between the level that we faced during the week and then coming back to the domestic level. But we all know domestic football is your bread and butter. But I'm going to go back to the point Colin made. That's where the squad comes into play, isn't it? And I think that it's been pretty difficult because Rodgers had to deal with the legacy of quite a big squad. He came in, he had a big squad, and a lot of those guys were not playing. And if you look at the transfer windows, particularly the January ones, in terms of players coming in, players going out, we've got rid of a lot of numbers. Big cut of the squad, and we're down to a much tighter squad. But with that, you then have to look at that bench the other night and say, well, Nawrocki, can we trust him to come on if it's 2 each or 1 each against Bayern Munich? And we're about 13 minutes of football, and his legs, the answer is probably no. So we're not quite there in terms of the squad game to try and make inroads to Europe, but also look towards winning a treble, because that's what the tagline is. That is always our expectation, and that's our goals and our objectives at the beginning of the season. But we're a wee bit short squad-wise, I think, Brian. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think in certain positions, I mean, we know we've got KT coming back in the summer, but with Taylor away and Schlupp away, we still need another left back. So right away you go, right, well, we need another left back already. I'm delighted by Dane Murray's getting some time.
Because you've been shouting about Dane Murray since he was about 12.
See, I was still here when he was shouting about Dane Murray. That's how long it's been.
I've been banging the drum. For the big fella. So it's good that he's coming in. But you're right, we need another centre half as well, just for a bit of cover. Do we need another right back? Is Ralston going to be the man to keep filling in for Johnson if there's injuries? So I think across it, and obviously we've mentioned the sort of holding midfielder role. I think that's been a real failing to get someone in and really sort of consider Callum's future there. Because, look, he's an incredible footballer, and I think he's actually probably one of the most underrated Scottish footballers in terms of the way he plays the game. Technically, the way he glides about the park, it's quite unusual. But time catches up with us all, and it's just that physicality is going to eventually deteriorate, so we need that longer-term view. Like Colin, love to see Lennon Miller coming in, especially a Celtic fan, young Scottish guy coming in, but we don't know what's going to happen there. But to answer your question, yeah, we do need that. And I'll be honest, like McCowan, when we were talking about signing him, I said I thought he was a bit unambitious. Like, I liked him as a player, but I felt, is that the type of player we should be signing? And I'm absolutely delighted to be wrong, because I think he's been excellent this season. I think if you look at value for money, other than Schmeichel, he's been the best value signing for, like, what was that, £1 million? And he's contributed quite a lot. He's been really, really good. Like, and I don't think when you know, if you were to start him, anyone goes, oh, no, McCowan, that's murder. Like, I think people are like, all right, the wee man on. And I think that's a good sign. Like, there's no moans and gloats when he starts. So I think he's going to do really well. And I can't remember who the commenter was, sorry, but I think I would rotate quite a lot of the squad tomorrow, because you do have that European hangover. It's just natural when you're playing against, you know, Bayern Munich, and then the exertions there. And I know they're all athletes, I know they're all players, I know they're all paid well, but they're still human. And when you drop into that, I think you need to rotate a bit. Plus, as well, you need to give the guys that are on the bench those extra minutes to make sure if they do have to go on against Munich or Emdales, they're up to scratch, they're up to pace. And the Ross, for example, where you couldn't bring him on even Saturday, because tomorrow, because he's just not going to be fit or sharp enough. So I think that's another reason why you need to rotate, particularly now when I know obviously we need to make sure we don't drop any silly points or give any encouragement, but we're in a very, very good position domestically where we can take that little bit of risk, whereas maybe we couldn't have before.
You know, the thing about Idah as well, I just want to reiterate the fact I think he's had a brilliant campaign in the Champions League. Coming into this season, he never played at that level, you know, domestically, and he scores in his first game, doesn't he? Him and Scalesy scored that night. We won 5-1 against Bratislava. You then look, for me, at his performance against Atalanta, which I felt was so, like, under the radar. His job that night, you know, the lone striker, thankless task. Much of his great work was without the ball at his feet, you know, and I would never overlook that. I thought it was a really great team performance, and he was a guy that had to run his socks off that night, and he did it well. And by the way, Trusty and Scalesy did brilliantly that night as well. And then you look at the young boys game, and technically, going back to your point, Brian, technically Kyogo's a better player, absolutely, but Kyogo doesn't force that error. Kyogo doesn't force that goal, because he doesn't have the strength. He doesn't hold off that defender the way that Idah did. And then Aston Villa, you know, talk about answering your critics, you know, that was unbelievable that night. So, no, I'm not criticising the big fella. I just think going over to Germany, this is my take, and I'm going to come to you on this one, James. I think, right, what we showed the other night is we basically frightened them, right? We frightened them in that first minute. We got a brilliant goal. The big man, the big Idah, in the road, basically, right? And that's the reason, because he was interfering with play and it gets chopped off, and it was so unfortunate for us. But I think that's the only way really to approach the game on Tuesday night, James, is to try and just catch them cold in the first couple of minutes, get that goal, and then, you know what, revert to your Atalanta if you need to for the rest of the night. You know, let them play, you know, sit back off them and play deep and defend with your lives, because we've proven we can do that, and we can do it away from home. James, is that dicing with death with a team like Bayern Munich away from home?
Well, I think just kind of given the circumstances, Bayern are going to dominate the ball. They're going to be on top in the early stages, and just kind of the nature of the game is probably going to go similar to the first leg, that we're going to try and hit them on the counter, try and be patient in our play, press them when we can, not sit too deep, kind of ideally sit in a bit of a mid block, like, and try and restrict them to as little as possible, and then kind of hope for the likes of Engels and Atate to kind of find Kuhn, Maida and Idah on the counter and get them in behind, because as I was saying, Bayern they kind of hold the highest line in the Bundesliga. They do concede like good quality chances as well, as you've seen this season with their defence. So there will be chances there for us, I'm sure, kind of small or kind of limited chances, but there will be kind of a couple of big chances there, maybe a couple of one-on-ones. We'll just be kind of need to just kind of take them when they come to us. In terms of Idah starting away to Munich, like if you look at Adam's career, like for Ireland, he's played kind of that kind of lone striker role. When we've played, kind of gone to Portugal, gone to France, gone to Netherlands, like he's done it so many times, even before this year, before the Atalanta game, before the Villa game. So he does have a lot of experience kind of being that lone striker, not having much service, and kind of being disciplined enough to kind of get on with it. and obviously at the same time offering that threat in behind. So I think it's probably kind of a must-start for Idah in terms of his profile, in terms of his history, kind of playing against in kind of big arenas, obviously playing against big players and holding that lone striker role. It's just kind of about him, obviously at the same time trying to get in behind, trying to be aggressive, and hopefully get some chances on the counter. Because, like as I was saying, like Idah, when he has confidence, he can he kind of has it all as a number 9. When he has confidence, he can really put it together. He can really have an impact on the game. It's just whether he kind of has that confidence, as you've seen out in Norwich, like with kind of they'd changed so many managers, injuries. He was never first choice. He kind of never had that run of games and put a kind of number of goals together over a full season, and like he's kind of done obviously since January now. He hasn't really been able to kind of do it consistently. And I think when the fans back him, when he kind of is feeling good, he can really have an impact on the game. And listen, hopefully he can kind of maybe get 1 or 2 goals against Dundee United at the weekend, and then going into Tuesday, he'll be really kind of ready to go and ready to kind of impact the game in a positive way.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I'm going to bring this up. This is thanks to Football Rankings on X or Twitter or whatever you call it these days. And this was looking ahead actually to next season, because obviously with regards to your score, your coefficiency and all this kind of stuff, next season there will be a Champions Path, and they were looking at the likelihood of seeded teams versus unseeded teams for next season. And obviously this is not cast in stone, but it gives you an idea, guys, of what you're kind of up against and the level of teams that you might be up against. It's unfortunate that we need to have these games, Colin, but this is where we are. We've enjoyed 3 seasons in a row of group football in the Champions League. But I've got to say, and it's not, being arrogant here, I'm looking at the unseeded teams and I'm thinking to myself, I'd fancy my chances against all of them.
Yeah, there's a couple of obviously bigger names in European football. They're not big names, but obviously we played Slovan earlier in the league stage and gave them a bit of a hiding. Bow, I remember back, I think it was under Martin O'Neill, we had to play them, and we obviously we had the game at Parkhead was 3-1, and then I think that one of the Akin brothers scored twice over in Bow to knock us out. Karabag, I think we've played them not that long ago, the Grets, and then Sturm Graz there, certainly coming through in the Austrian league. And I know the former Motherwell right back, Max Johnson's there as well. We're having a good time. But of those teams, you're thinking, it is, but we have to be in the position that we have the squad ready to go. And I think when we think back to the seasons where we didn't get through these qualifiers, a lot of it came down to the fact that it was like, we're not going to spend money until we find out if we're going to be in the Champions League or not. We've had that money now for a couple of years. The bank account's at the highest almost it's ever been. The turnover, we know we've got players that are probably going to depart and bring even more money in. We've made the most money we've ever made this season. We have to speculate to accumulate. And if that's the teams that we're coming up against, if Rodgers wants X, Y, and Z, get them in before that tie, get them integrated, get them in as soon as possible. None of this, it's a difficult market, we'll get through it eventually. Pay the money it needs to be paid and make sure that if you spend 15 million or whatever it is to get those players in, there's 50, 60, potentially 70 million, depending on where you finish in the Champions League. And that's the quality of opposition you've got to come up against. Back the man, he's proven that he can get the results. We've got to the last 24 as it is right now. Let's build on that. Let's build on a position of strength. It's something that Celtic have just never done.
See, the big thing, I'll come back to you, Colin, to ask you about Kyogo and Jota. You've not had a chance to talk about them. But I fully endorse that approach, Brian, and I think you're the same. I mean, this is sometimes the frustration of the January transfer window as well. You're looking ahead to these fixtures, these potential fixtures for next season. Now, by that point, you've got a campaign under your belt of your Engels or Idah or Trusty, and that benefits them. I mean, remember how, it benefited Kyogo, and remember how it benefited Matt O'Reilly, and how it maybe took them into their second campaign before you really seen them flourishing. And we're seeing Engels and Idah and Trusty playing really, really well for Celtic. I mean, as I said there, Idah's had a part to play in 4 big games in Champions League this season for us. You look at Trusty's performance the other night, I would actually say probably one of his best performances in a Celtic jersey, to the point where he was the better of the two, which is unusual when you're playing alongside CCV. And then, of course, Engels, I've been banging a drum on Engels Dane Murray style. I think he's a phenomenal talent. I think the ceiling is the highest in the squad, all of this kind of stuff. Yeah, he's a bit of a rough diamond and we need to refine it, and Rodgers is the man to do it. But I think that was part of the frustration in January, Brian, the fact that these results, these fixtures are just around the corner and you need to get the players bedded in.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And to go along with the rest of the examples, if you look at Kuhn last season as well, a lot of people in the comments that are giving us grief for some of his takes for writing Kuhn off. He was rubbish, he wasn't there for it. So just remember, you need to give these players chances and give them a bit of time. So I think you're right. If I'm playing devil's advocate, we go to Jota back, who's going to be really up to speed by next season, and KT back. So 2 quality players for next season. I know it's no ideal, we should have got more, but I think that there is a degree of forward planning. I just think the execution, as always, is weirdly lacking. There's always that logic lap with our transfers that I can never quite get. Because you can look at our transfers in a bunch of different ways and make different arguments, right? So I'll make both. It's been a good couple of transfer windows if you look at the quality that's come in and the amount of money we've made, right? But the flip side is we're letting players go with replacements. We're not signing players in the right positions. We're still leaving it to the last day. So it's this weird sort of, you're never quite sure how to feel like transfer windows at times, because there is loads of positives, but there's weird baffling inconsistencies. Like Kyogo going and not having a replacement is bonkers. That's just like, feels like weird logic. Letting Valle go and then having to scramble last day, get somebody in for 6 months. That is nonsense. But then getting Jota back and getting KT back was excellent. So it is strange, but I think overall it's something, I mean, I don't know how long I've been saying it, and I think we all rejoice when Ange's done it. But just get these players in early, especially in January, because you know you're going to be, deals can be done, conversations can be had before you actually get to the transfer window. They can be arranged beforehand. There's no reason that can't happen if you know what you need to get. Why wait to? It's this sort of. I think it's down to how we negotiate. If I'm honest, it feels like we sort of go, well, we'll just leave it to the last minute and see if they panic because they support the player and get them a couple of million cheaper. It always feels like that weird mentality. And in a way, sometimes I feel we shoot ourselves in the foot because, for this season, it's going to be really hard to argue that we've not had really good success with the transfers we've brought in and done really well. So if you're the board, you're going to go, well, why should we change our approach? No, that's not really the reality. The reality is we've done that and it could have went really wrong, but it just didn't. We've got to be more proactive than reactive with these things. So I think, it's got to be looked at, which I was assuming why Tisdale was coming in to really help facilitate a lot of this organisation and structure. And then Brendan Rodgers is flying down to London last day at the window to convince Sloop to join our 6-month loan. So a bit of disconnect for me. So I'm not totally down on I think sometimes we can be a wee bit harsh with the business that's done, especially when you've got some of the players that have come in. But I think how we do the business is really questionable, and it leaves a lot of logic gaps. Interestingly
enough, one of the teams that are seeded there in that group that I brought up was Bodo Glimt. Obviously, we faced them under Ange. And last night, Twente Escudé beat them 2-1. And Gustav Lagerbielke, the seldom seen kid, he started the game. And it looks as though we're going to get our money back, at least on Lagerbielke. So we are doing some good things. We did the same with Bernabé. It's like we're doing some good things. But, we'll never be perfect, Brian, but you do want to try and make it better, particularly with the examples you used there with the left-back scenario and the striker scenario. We were screaming about it for weeks. Daniel F., you're in, and we can play Engels, McCowan and Hatate tomorrow. It's doing him, i.e. Callum McGregor, more damage playing him constantly. Let's have a look at the team then, and we'll just run through it. Defence, then midfield, then attack. And Colin, I'll come to you first. I'm going to line up the defence with Schmeichel and goals. I mean, it's maybe a good opportunity to bring in Sinisalo, but there's also the balancing act of not making too many changes. So I'm going to have Schmeichel and goals. I'm going to start Sloop at left back. And then in the central defensive area, simply, I would have rested Carter Vickers, but he's only right-sided centre-half we've got with any kind of game time. So I'll play Carter Vickers alongside Scalesy. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to give Johnston and Ralston a half each, but I'll probably start with Ralston. So that's my backline, Colin. How do you start against United?
I don't think we'll make too many changes. I think one of the things about Rodgers, and if you look at the stats this season, is the amount of games that each player is playing, they maybe not play the full game. You see the subs tend to come on around about the 60-minute mark and then the 75-minute mark. So I think Schmeichel will start in goal. I think Schlupp might be the one that comes in. I think it'll be Schlupp at left back. I think it'll be Carter Vickers Trusty, and I think Johnson will play. I don't think he'll make too many changes. The thing is, you still got to be very respectful of Dundee United. They are a good side. They're showing that. They're in the top 6, and they've got Big Dolby up front, who is one of the top scorers this season. So although they're going to not have a lot of the ball, we've still got to show him the respect that if he gets one chance, there's every chance he could put it in net.
No, you do. And that's always, even against lower league teams this season, Falkirk and Wraith Rovers, you go into them and you look at the changes, and it's always a concern if there's half a dozen changes. Yeah. James, how do you line up at the back against Dundee United at the weekend?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see us make a couple of changes, going into kind of next Tuesday. Obviously, you want to, however unlikely it is, you want to kind of give ourselves the best opportunity. I think obviously Schmeichel starting goals. I'd like probably see Ralston play. I think he's kind of ultra reliable in terms of these games. Never really puts a foot wrong. Kind of similar to Brian, I do kind of quite like Dane Murray. I think I kind of liked him since he came on the scene a couple of years ago. Under Ange, playing that Champions League qualifier against Michelin, 6'3", whatever he is, tall, kind of strong, moves across the pitch quite well, and just like to see him tested in against a more kind of competitive team with Dundee United with Dalby up front. Then obviously Liam Scales as Liam Scales CSC, I kind of have to pick Liam Scales, and then Jeffrey Schlupp at left back, because just kind of with his pace and stuff, I think he can kind of overlap, and on that left side he probably caused Dundee United some problems.
So we've got the Andy Engels CSC, the Liam Scales CSC, and the Dane Murray CSC all in one shot. And Brian, what about yourself? Big changes or just tweaks for you?
I think across the team it'll just be tweaks, but I think in the back four, I think it'd be Schmeichel. I think Johnson, I think will start still. I think it'll be Dane Murray instead of Carter Vickers, just because Carter Vickers only just came back for a wee knock, and the drop off between him and Dane is still very big. So if you're going to Germany, you need to make sure he's there. I think Trusty will start, because I don't think he'll rotate the full back four. I would like to see Big Scale start, but I think Trusty will probably start just to keep the momentum up, because I agree with you, Paul. I thought it was a great game. And I think Schlupp will start, because I also think he'll start on Tuesday. So I think he'll probably want to get minutes under his belt. So that would be my back four. So Schmeichel, Johnson, Dane, Trusty, and Schlupp.
Is that a sort of hoping that Dane Murray starts over Scales? Or yeah, I wasn't sure if that's where we were going there.
Yeah, that's 100% it. Hope over expectation.
It's heart over head there.
The thing is, well,
it's Valentine's Day after all.
Yes, it is. But he's calling him by his first name. That's how familiar he is with Dane Murray. I'll just play Dane at the back. Midfield for me, again, I'm going to go back to the points that Colin made, and I think it is an opportunity, with respect to Dundee United, it's an opportunity to give Callum McGregor a bit of rest. I would like to see the stats insofar as how quickly you make your 500 appearances from the day of your debut to when you make your 500, and the length of time it takes you. Yeah. And I bet you he did it quicker than many on that list. So I'm going to go midfield, and then my front three, which I've already given. So my midfield is going to be Engels. I'm going to play McCowan, and I'm also going to be playing Hatate, who ran his backside off. And then up top, I would start with Idah through the middle, Kuhn on the right, and on the left I'd start with Jota. Colin, what about yourself?
Well, I think back some of one of the best performances of this season was the Ross County game at home, when we rotated the whole midfield. And for me, I would go with McCowan, Engels, and Bernardo tomorrow if he's fit. I know he's obviously still coming back from injury, but if he's fit, that's who I would play in there. I think the idea tomorrow might be that we won't need that sort of holding player. Engels can slot in there if needed. But if you think back to that Ross County game, the amount of play that we had going forward, the three of them just clicked really, really well. And I think that would be my midfield three. Front three, I think I would go with the exact same as you, Paul. I'd have Jota, Kuhn, and Idah.
Yeah, up top, give Maida a rest. James, it was funny actually going into that game. Brendan didn't expect to have Maida, so he run the legs off him and then had to play him against Bayern Munich as well, and he admitted that. James, what about yourself, midfield and forwards against Dundee United?
Yeah, similar enough. I think midfield three, just rest McGregor, hopefully. Engels kind of sitting as the 6, and then McCowan and Tata is the two eights. Front three then, probably Jota, Idah, and then I kind of like to see Yanks there over Kuhn, just kind of to give Kuhn a rest. Maybe Kuhn plays the last half an hour, last 40 minutes, whatever it is, just to kind of make sure he's kind of as fresh as possible for next week.
And also to reward Yang, because he did really well the other night, Brian.
Yeah, I thought it was quite positive, the performance off the bench. Like, I think, like, it's kind of very up and down with the narrative around Yang, but like the kind of reality is, like, we know what he's really good at. He's very fast, he's sharp. He can have them moments of magic, kind of dribbling wise, taking people on. It's just kind of the final product, and if you can put that together, like, there's a player there, but it's just kind of whether he can put that together. Yeah,
the full package. Brian, give us the rest of your team. We know that you're starting with your pal Dane at the back. Who else is starting?
So I think same with the boys. Actually, I think Engels, McCowan, and Hatate probably. Just for Hatate, just a wee bit extra confidence maybe. Although Bernardo could come in, but either combination would be fine. And front three, Kuhn, Maida, and Idah.
So you're starting with Maida. And predictions, lads.
Sorry, Jota, Idah, and Kuhn. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-0.
names.
Maida, Idah. I'm going to go 2-0 Celtic at the weekend, because, as Colin says, Dundee United are a decent side. I think Jimmy Goodwin's done brilliant since he's taken over, and I reckon 2-0, Colin.
Yeah, well, that was the score last time we played them only a couple of weeks ago at Parkhead. I think if we can get an early goal, it could be quite a dominant performance. Dundee United's standards have kind of went down a wee bit over the last few weeks, have not been quite up there. I think if we can get an early goal with that midfield, we can cause them a bit of damage. We're on form, we're scoring a few goals. I'm going to go for 4-0.
4-0, says Colin. James, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think if he rotates heavily, I kind of see maybe Dalby getting a goal, so I'll go with 3-1. Adam might have a hat-trick, hopefully.
Oh, nice. 3-1, 4-0, 2-0. Brian, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, 3-0. I think it'll be fairly comfortable, to be fair. And again, respect to Dundee United. I think Goodwin's done a good job, but I think we're in good form, good place, and I think the guys will want to show themselves in the window for the Munich game. So, yeah.
Aye, without a doubt. Now, anyone out there who has forgotten to buy their loved one a wee Valentine's gift, why not just log on the link underneath and bring them along to see the gorgeous Dolph Lundgren at Gracie's on Thursday, which is in a couple of weeks. Tickets are £15. Colin's laughing because he's got all his presents all lined up. He's still in that honeymoon period.
Come on. Once you get married, you can forget all about it. But what I'm saying here,
I bet that's better than your green out roaster shout. That's another.
The wife's here. She'll hear it. No, but you don't want to encourage. If you've just started a relationship and you're encouraging them to go and see big, gorgeous Johan Mjällby,
I need to start on a stage with him.
He's going to get dumped.
Aye,
they'll all be after big Johan.
Aye, and no wonder. But yes, come along and join the fun at Gracie's in a couple of weeks' time. Listen, it's always an absolute pleasure, and it's great to see some new faces in young James and some old. And I only mean old in terms of your length of your contribution to Acsom, Colin.
The grey hair's there as well.
Hey, listen, man, just that you're blessed if you've got it. You've been round the block a few times, mate. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved, and thank you for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.